Hey guys, Greg from Player Driven here. Here's what you're about to listen to on today's episode. This one's a really great episode. We're joined by Jason Wasserman and Vincent Nguyen. They're the co-founders of Nice Gang, and they launched a game called Eighth Era. They both got their starts at Blue Sky Animation, and then went their separate ways. One went to King, one went to Disney, and then they came back together to found a game studio. And it's such a cool story to hear and learn more about. If you aren't following Player Driven, be sure to check out our Instagram page as well as our YouTube channel or TikTok. We're sharing content on all different channels, so be sure to check it out. And I really hope you enjoy learning more about Eighth Era. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Player Driven. Greg here. Today we have a really special episode. I'm joined by Jason Wasserman and Vincent Nguyen, the co-founders of Nice Gang, right as season 2 of their game Eighth Era launches. Jason and Vincent bring a wild mix of experience to the table. Jason spent years helping build Blue Sky Studios during the rise of animation hits like Ice Age, and later led finance at the Walt Disney Studios. Vincent, meanwhile, spent over a decade at Blue Sky shaping the look and feel of films like Rio and Peanuts, and later led visual development at King. Now they're teaming up to create something new, a game studio that's blending deep world building original IP with community first mindset. We're going to dive into their journey, understand what they've learned from the world of animation that they could bring to mobile gaming, and just hear the formation of a studio and how it worked. So that was a lot. Vincent, Jason, thank you so much for joining me. You want to let us know where you're joining us from today and a little bit about yourself? And maybe, Jason, you want to kick it off?
Sure, that'd be great. First of all, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it. Vince and I love to tell our story to anybody who'll listen. So thank you for having us on. I'm calling in from Westchester County, New York, which is north of New York City, in a town called Katona. We're about 45 minutes north of the city. And so we're enjoying one of our few really nice spring days so far this year, but happy to be here and talk about everything Nice Gang and I appreciate you having us on.
Of course, Vincent.
Yes, I'm calling in from Houston, Texas. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and couldn't wait to leave it to go to the big city to be an artist. I lived in New York for over 20 years, and now I'm back for the last 2 years. So be closer with family and working remote. So that's yeah, it's been working out pretty well. Very different from New York City, right?
Yeah, I could imagine. I'd say the weather's probably nicer, but as Jason said, we have a beautiful day out today. So we could probably put up a fight for
If you've
today
ever
at
been to
least.
Houston in the summertime,
Yeah.
it's toasty. It's
Hey,
toasty
so
to say the
we
least.
we have we have this thing called AC.
That's
Yeah,
Fixes
right.
that's while the grid is working down there in Texas. It's hit or miss.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Uh, I love your guys' stories, and Jason, we spoke a lot about it on the pre-calls that we had. Right, is that you're coming from the world of animation, and people know the characters from Blue Sky. They know Ice Age, they know Peanuts, they know Rio, they know all that stuff. And it's so cool to hear it go into become a studio on the gaming side of things, right? So before we dive deep into this, what I'm really curious about is what skills do you each bring to the table when you're working together, right? You both have different specialties, and I'm curious on kind of where your skill sets lie, and when you're looking at your day to day today, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a lot of, for those that don't may not know, there's a lot of correlation between animation and gaming, right? It's that balance between the engineers and the artists, right? And so you have to be able to balance both those things. And I would say my biggest asset coming into this was knowing how to work with both those parties. Artists, they're a little fickle, no offense, Vince,
Yeah.
but because artists will tell you that every single corporate guy will be like, it needs to be done in 3 days, it needs to be done now, you're running late. But art takes time, right? It takes time to breathe, it takes time to get the best out. We always used to say, like, you could get 90% of the way there in art in the first 2 days, but then to get that last 10% would take another week, because it's really about refining it and perfecting it. And so being able to work with artists and understand their temperament and understand how they like to work was incredible. But then When we were at Blue Sky, I had, I think the R&D team, the engineering team was somewhere around 70 engineers writing code, writing tools. I mean, a huge team of engineers. So you have to understand the balance between those two things because they also get the same pressure. Oh, that shouldn't be a big deal. Just add that, create that tool. It'll take a couple days. But understanding how they work and how they process, that's the key. Because then you can bring those two teams together. That's really when the magic happens, and you start to really build something that's very cool.
Would you kind of liken that back to just basically management skills, understanding what this group of individuals are good at, how it connects to this, how to keep a project on schedule, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think planning is everything, right? You have to really come in and be open-eyed, especially with a game with games, right? Because they're super complex, and Vince always puts it the best. They're incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard to create a really good game, and so you got to make sure that you plan everything out properly. That you bring people on at the right times. That you give them the opportunities to be successful. I think too often in these games you don't have enough resources or you have too many resources, and then that creates its own problems with inefficiencies and all kinds of other cultural things. But for us, I think we one of the great things that we did, and the reason we were able to make our game at such a lower price point, was because we planned everything out step by step, and we brought people on as we needed them, and we didn't overcorrect or either way. We found solutions, and the bottom line is you're always going to run into road bumps. You're always going to have issues. You've got to just be able to like have a good team, take everybody's advice, bring them in, and then find a solution and work towards that goal.
That's awesome to hear. We often at Player Driven talk about feedback, and you're collecting feedback internally, making sure that people are working, everyone's clicking, and you're hearing each person. I've heard multiple times that a good manager, what they do is they remove the roadblocks for those that are working for them, right? So it sounds like that's
Yep.
what you're doing is you're helping understand, hey, what is stopping you from getting from point A to point B, and let's remove those roadblocks so we can continue to move forward.
Yeah, even going more, a little bit deeper, it's really understanding how your team works. Because every individual is unique, right? They all have their own things that are important to them, whether it's like even going even deeper into like things like work-life balance or pressure, like some people feed off of pressure. Some people just shrink when pressure's put on them. So the people that shrink, your job as a manager is to keep that pressure off of them and don't let them feel any of the stress. Just let them do what they need to do and go as fast as they need to go. Yeah, that's the key too. It's just getting to know people and getting to understand how they like to work and how and what makes them motivated, and then tapping into that as much as possible to get the results out.
Awesome. And I guess, Vincent, same question, right? You're coming from the more creative side of the process here, right? What is the kind of superpower that you're bringing to Nice Gang? How do those skills translate from what you were doing animation to now kind of game creation?
Yeah, like Jason said, the correlation from games to movies is very, very, very similar. And more so through cinematics and cutscenes and all the fancy graphics that games are doing today. You know, I think what I bring is very different from what Jason. You know what I mean? I'm obsessed with image making, storytelling, uh, motivation for characters. Acting and all that stuff. And you know, I've always um, loved that side of creating worlds beyond what I even sometimes think capable of, and that's sort of what I love to bring in, in the gaming business, like especially movies is definitely larger than life, and now you're taking you know that storytelling aspect of creating a character for movies and then bringing it into a game and then being able to actually control that character. That's pretty powerful, for me specifically.
I think it's really cool, especially when you take a look at Eighth Era, right? You have different heroes that have different stories that's all building towards this kind of greater story. And I'm curious because I've never really done a podcast with someone that's on the create like a story person before or visual like this, but like how does this begin in your mind? Like are you just sitting there, the two of you one day, kind of spitballing ideas? Like you take this seed that's growing into this whole complex plant, right? And how does that seed get started?
And believe it or not, we created like scripts, and you know, we started it as a mini series of a TV show, or you know, uh, a 3 act structure film. We blocked it all out, and then we just sort of added characters that sort of made sense, um, and then deconstructed it for specifically a genre of game. If you ask me if we wanted to do MMO right now, I could break that same script into an MMO, like um or even like, I don't know, Switcher, or merge game, who knows. I
We
feel like
we we kind of stole a mantra that we had at Blue Sky, which I think was a mantra that other it wasn't just original to Blue Sky, but we want to explore worlds that haven't been explored yet, right? So it's got to be something original. It's got to be something that nobody's seen before. You might not like it, you might love it, but it's not going to be another fantasy, medieval type of game, right? It's going to be a world that's very unique, because what we've found is that those are the worlds that people fall in love with, right? The ones that are incredibly unique. And so that was one of the things. And to Vince's point, we were like, all right, we've got this base of characters, we've got time. Let's start thinking about storylines and how, like, we could, again, we could talk about transmedia and all of that stuff. But we of course went to our sweet spot, which was animated films, right? And we've seen thousands of them, and we've made our own, and been a part of making these great movies. So like we were like, okay, let's build a story. Then from there, we build a character. Vince designs the characters with his brother. We then create the story, the world. Now we're ready to bring in our developers and start building a game because we have that foundation already in place. It's just that it might. I don't know how other game developers do it, but that's how we approached it, because in our minds, if it's a great creative, then you're already way down the road for building your game.
How does storytelling change when there's a character that's being controlled by a player versus, say, a movie that's kind of more on rails? Did you notice that there's any changes there, or because it's still on rails, the game you could kind of control that flow?
I mean, I would say that there's very little difference, because you build the character. Like even like when you're doing character driven stories, and I think Vince might agree with me here. The character is the character. Then the story is a story that's probably been told 1,000 different times, but because you have this unique character in this unique world, it presents itself as new. I mean, buddy films have been done 1,000 times, right? Or buddy road movies, or all these different types of genres. Same thing in games. Like, it's like, okay, we're going to build this character, and he's got these traits. We know what the physical traits, because those are for the game. But then what are his psychological traits? What are the interesting things about him? How does he act around his friends? Does he have friends? What is, all these different things. And that's where you can have a lot of fun with the characters. And then those characters in the game will then have their own voice. Right. And so I would say that, with Eighth Era, you have a rainbow of characters that have all different kinds of voices, some fun and lighthearted, some very serious, some sinister, some joking, and all different intellectual. So,
yeah,
but
and
Vince, what do you think?
yeah, and one part that was a little different for me was, when the game designers came in and gave characters abilities, and you know it actually sort of in my head changed the story of who they were when I originally started, thinking about them, designing them. So that was kind of cool. That's very different from making a film, right? Because you figure all that out before you create the character, and specifically what they're acting for. But in games, because you know, especially this game, every character has X amount of abilities, and those abilities, innately make them a certain type of character, like an attacker versus a defense, or a magician, so it's, you know you automatically get a sense of who that character is through their abilities, which is pretty interesting to me.
Do you have like pushback when you first see something like that? Like, no, that's not who I pictured this character to be, or do you kind of go in that with an open mind and say, hey, we got to
Yeah,
evolve, we got to.
yeah. I mean, uh, I think the game team did a amazing job of just um, giving me the heads up on their needs, as far as like, we need we need this character in this faction that does this. Like, do you have any ideas? And you know, being an artist, I had a million ideas. So now you get to sketching, and then you work out what that character does with the weapon, the abilities, and stuff like that. So um,
So you're both at Blue Sky for a number of years, many years. You kind of split. Vincent, you go towards King in gaming. Jason,
yeah.
you go towards the Walt Disney pictures, right, and stuff like that. Then you eventually reconnect and decide, hey, let's build a game. How does that go down?
Yeah. I'll let Jason tell this one.
So I mean, I'll give you the full story. So we had closed down Blue Sky because of the pandemic. We were a victim of the pandemic. Um, and very very like, very emotional, sad thing. So we closed that up in May, said goodbye to a lot of good friends. It was really, really tough thing. Luckily, everybody landed somewhere for the most part. So, that was a great thing. Then I was just kind of I decided to take the summer off because I had worked since I was 20 years old. I hadn't had a day off, and or not day off, but I hadn't been out of work since I was 20. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take some time. And literally I'm road tripping around the US, and 3 days in, I get a email or text from Vince. Hey, I'm back in America. I'm having lunch with one of our Blue Sky friends. Uh, I got this idea for a video game, for a mobile game company. When we chat, and I was like, yeah, sure. So we chatted, and literally he told me about it and everything else. And he's like, yeah, would you be interested in coming on? And I was like, Vince, I was like, come on to what? Like, you're building, like, I thought at that time, I didn't know, but I thought like he had like maybe $200,000-300,000 to like build like some like, inexpensive mobile game. So I was like, I can't do that. Like, it's not gonna work. And he's like, no, 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 no. We'll raise a ton of money. We've got a guy who's gonna get us started and this, that, and the other thing. And so I literally, I think like a week later, flew back from Nashville, and we met with one of the founders, a man by the name of Mark Salzberg, and kind of went through the iteration of the idea of what we wanted to build, which was like this triple A mobile game company that also rewards players with physical rewards, like bringing the digital and the physical together. And that's when, and then Vince at that time, I think, had moved back from England. And so we were just like, it was like perfect timing. Everything was lining up. And we were just like, yeah, let's talk about it. We talked about it for about, I think, another month or two. And then we got started and we started working on it. And that was 4 years, like I said, that was 4 years ago. So that's sometimes it's just as simple as that, just all right, yeah, let's do it. Um, but it was the right time for all of us, because of, and by the way, as bad as COVID was, like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for COVID, and Vince probably would still be in Europe working
Yeah,
for King.
I would still be at King. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
and so in that respect, like there was a positive there, was a positive note there. So um, that's how
It was,
we
it was a
together.
simpler time.
Yeah.
Who would ever thought we could say that?
Yeah.
What about you, Vince? I love the idea that I mean, you were at King, right? So you have Candy Crush experience, and you think of this, I'm not going to say drastically different idea of a mobile game, but it doesn't follow the Candy Crush kind of formula is in match threes, right? So how did you kind of come to a hero kind of driven
Well,
RPG?
I was hired at King to develop their to help develop their new games. So Candy Crush, wasn't something. It wasn't that I really worked on. I helped do some visual designs for Candy Crush Friends, but they really brought me on to to help steer the visual development side on their new games, and working with uh, you know different game teams in different countries because they had game teams across the whole entire country. From Sweden to Barcelona, Berlin, everywhere. And you know, every game team worked independently, and every game team, you know, had their way of working. So a part of what I learned was literally how to make games from the ground up, from start to finish, and um, it was a very eye-opening experience, as with the games we were developing, because they weren't match three games or merge games that we were doing. They were, you know, more mid-core games, and I was trying to bring that level of animation art quality to those type of games and develop story and stuff like that. So yeah, it was but it was but it was a great experience with working with great game makers over in Europe. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned when you see how a game is made, right? From the outside looking in, you're just wondering why is the DLC taking so long to come out? Can't you just put a few engineers on this, right? But then
yeah,
you start to see, hey, not only do we have to create a game, we gotta translate it, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, we gotta right. Like it's no wonder that games take so long to get made. But I think once you start seeing that process, you can start to formulate how it works. And Jason, I imagine as where you sit, you kind of can start to see these teams being formed. And a question I have for you, Jason, is from the business side, what did you learn that translated well from blue sky over to game studios when starting a studio? Or maybe the better question would be, is there something you didn't expect to happen when you started a game studio that you were caught off guard?
I don't think there's anything necessarily that caught me off guard. I think that the biggest difference for us is that when you're doing film, the only thing that I mean, you studio executives will look at, okay, what type of movies right now are popular, and then they'll look at your slate of develop with stuff in development and go, okay, that's not what's popular right now. Now that could also be the kiss of death, and every creative will tell you that's the worst thing you could do, right? Because there would be no ice age if we just did what everybody else was doing, right? um, but the big difference is that with games is that there's so much data, and I mean, it is a data driven business, and it's probably, in terms of creative businesses, it's the most data driven creative business. I mean, Vince would tell me, we would sit there that first year. It was just Vince, his brother, and myself, and that was it. And we would sit and talk about his days at King, and how, like, they would A/B test a green button versus a red button. And I forget the story exactly, but like they tested a red button and revenue went up 15%, right? Or something to that effect. And that just blew my mind because I mean, we'll do like a test screening towards the end of the movie and make some small tweaks, but by that point, you're 80 million, 100 million, 120 million into the film. There's not a ton that you can do to change it. Your characters are your characters. Um, but that was the biggest thing. And to that point, when we started, the game that you see now was not the original game that we were planning on making. Originally, Vince's vision was a rail shooter. Um, what sort of, like just up and down, boom, 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 sort of like a you know 3D Subway Surfer kind of thing where you're shooting and everything else. But as we got into our research and as we got into our data, and we said, okay, we got this. Like nothing seemed to fit with that genre that we wanted. It was just we were kind of forcing it, and so Vince made the tough decision to be like, okay, I'm going to let go of that, and instead we're going to go over here to an idle turn-based RPG, which is a big shift. Our costs went from probably a couple million. We kind of probably made that rail shooter for 2-3 million, and they shoot all the way up to 10 million, 8 to 10 million. So that changed our business model, how fast we could make it, all of the things. But if you want to talk about hero collection, you want to talk about physical collection, you want to talk about story, characters, all these things that we want to emphasize, this is the genre that best fits what we're trying to do. And the data kind of drove us there. I mean, going on Sensor Tower and being able to see the taxonomy of every game that you want and what's in it, it's mind blowing. Like we used to do that at Blue Sky, where people would go through the movies and we would have people that would do full analysis of a movie, like number of characters, number of sets, what type of film, what worked, what didn't work, all these type of things to get a sense of like, okay, what are movies that audiences are responding to, but it doesn't even compare to all the data that's out there now for game designers, game developers, producers. Really, you have to be deep into that stuff before you even get started to really have before you build your roadmap out.
Yeah. Oftentimes, we always talk about how much data there is out there. We also talk about maybe getting a trap where there's just too much data and you're following the data without actually listening to other people and what they have to say, right? So I think there's data driven, then there's data obsessed as well, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's that line you got to say, hey, you know what? I know the data is saying this, but I want to do this, right? So understanding where you draw that line, why you need to do it, and not just get too caught up in the numbers.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's a saying that players don't know what they want until you give it to them. So yeah, if you totally focus just on the data, then you're just going to produce what everybody else is producing, in which case you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to even find an audience. It's going to be very difficult. So you use that as a foundation to say, okay, these are sort of the table stakes that we need to have in the game. Then we elevate it. We elevate the game by bringing in better art, better story, some better new mechanics, and then also swing for the fences, take some risks, take some big risks, and see what might land. You just never know until you introduce something, and then you've got Fortnite, right? And then things like that happen all the time. I mean, Candy Crush, right? King was like a casino, right? Weren't they like a casino company or something? And a casino game company, and then they did this and used candy, and yeah, next thing, the rest is history. So you got to swing for the fences and take big risks if you want to find a large audience. For sure.
Cool. Um, so we're about halfway through. Usually halfway through, we do kind of like a fireball round. I'm just going to throw a random question at you and get your answer. And then I want to talk more about specifically Eighth Era and kind of see what you're doing there. So good to go.
Shoot.
All right. What is the last TV show you binge watched?
I mean, I'm gonna sound so lame, but I just finished last night binge watching Ted Lasso. So
Nice.
I'm way behind because I didn't have Apple TV. Vince will tell you I'm very anti-Apple. That's a whole nother story. We could do a podcast on that. But uh but we got but I finally broke down because a friend of mine was like, you got to see Ted Lasso, you'll love it. It's right up your alley. So finally over this past weekend I binge watched it, and it was phenomenal. It was
There
great.
you go. You're ready for the new season that's eventually going to come out.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Vince?
Yeah, for me, it was Ozark. Not kind of old. Now you realize how little TV I actually watch. So yeah, that
Bet-
was sort of the
Better
last.
late than never, right? Uh, what did you have for breakfast?
Go ahead, Vince.
I actually don't eat breakfast. I drink lots of coffee.
How do you take your coffee then?
Black.
There you go. What's
Yep.
the coffee down there that everyone loves in Texas? It's like,
I had my go-to protein shake, milk, protein, and peanut butter. Worked out this morning, so
so you're feeling good.
but I do when I don't work out in the morning, I do like to just have some eggs and toast. It's my go-to. Love it. Simple, straightforward, quick to make. You can 15-minute break, go grab it
There you go.
See,
and
that's
go
that's
for it.
my thing. I eat a big dinner, so it always carries over to breakfast. It feels
Yeah.
I'm with you, Vince. I'm not a big breakfast fan. Give me a coffee. Sometimes I'll put like protein powder and make a
Yeah.
latte. Like, what else do you need?
dang. That
That's
sounds
it.
good.
Um,
That's it.
what is the last game you played? Not counting Eighth Error. Testing out season two.
All right. So last game that I truly played, meaning like a lot. So I download a dozen games a week and I'll play like the first 25, 30 minutes of them just to see like, okay, what's that first time user experience? I'm constantly trying to like compare our game to other games. So dozens of those. But uh NCAA football is I mostly when it comes to games, mostly sports, and I play them with my kids. So NCAA football is the last one that we've been playing pretty consistently for like the last 6 months.
All right.
As
Vince.
much, yeah, for me, as much as I love console games, and I want more than anything to play a console game. I always end up playing mobile games, and I always go back to Clash Royale. I was one of the first players to test it, and 6 years later, I'm still like, you know, playing that game.
There you go. King, not King. Supercell's got a hook on you there, huh?
Oh yeah, and I'm a big fan of Supercell games, and
Yeah,
I know a lot of those guys who work over there, so they're great people too. So
yeah. You want to? It's interesting. Supercell. I mean, here's like Brawl Stars. I don't know how old Brawl Stars is, but it's years and years and years and old. My 12-year-old son, who's in sixth grade, all his buddies like earlier this year found Brawl Stars, and now they're just playing constantly. So that's a that shows you that like if you make the game right and you make it engaging, that it could be evergreen. Like it can just keep going, and new players will come in and just keep going.
Yeah, we this is the community that you want to build, right? You want like back in the day we had N64, right? We'd have
yeah,
couch co-op all sitting next to each other,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
all of a sudden we became an online place where we could play anywhere, which is great, but you lose that sense of community when you're not with someone. I feel like with a game like Brawl Stars, which I've never played, but I realized that all the third graders in my town play it as well. Like they're
yeah.
all getting together and still playing games. Like, yeah, it's a mobile game, but that's awesome that they're all taking the time to go sit together, hang out together, and play this game together. Because when you're together playing that stuff, it's just such a cool sense of community and being together. And I think it's important to bring experiences like that back.
Lots of tears,
Lots of years. Then you got to
and
kick
Yeah.
someone
trash
out of the
talk.
group if they're idle.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that was
cool.
honestly that was one of the most interesting things. Like as a father, you like we my son, when my oldest first started playing console games, and it was like he's on there, all day long, and oh God, you don't let your kids play video games for 3, 4 hours and da 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 da. But then I realized like that's his social network. Like those are the people that he's gonna see them in school later that day. Like to your point, like we used to go down in the basement and play. Now they log on and they do the same thing. They just don't go over everybody's houses. Um, but I think it's also a great way for people to connect. Plus, you can connect with people from all over the world. That's the other thing too that you couldn't do, from your Sega Genesis.
Yeah. And I think this all goes in kind of to that kind of next topic I wanted to talk about, which is kind of world building in a way, right? You're here creating this entire world, and you kind of spoke about where the idea of Eighth Era came from, Vince telling us kind of what you were playing. But like you look at the market today and see all the different games that are out, right? How do you try and stay original? What do you do that's a little different when you're at the drawing table to say, hey, we're going to be different when we start creating our game, right? At the time, I don't know if you knew it was going to be called the Eighth Era, but like, how do you start that process?
I think for specifically for me, there's for creating anything, there's always a problem, and you have to figure out what that problem is, and then sort of build that world around that problem, and then cast a group of characters, heroes, villains, and then now once you have that, you could now break down every single sort of like, you know character in size and gender, or or non-gender, or whatever you want, right? And once you have that, you know you can almost build, you know a blanket sort of cast, and before you go very deep and very specific, because what tends to happen as an artist is, you always tend to always go straight for the details, um but you know building everything, knowing everything that's supposed to be built, and sort of having a big sort of idea of what that is before you get very granular, I think that's very important. So it's tough for me to talk about, like, you know very specific characters, because when I'm thinking of building a world, it has to be bigger than just one particular character, so I would never start with one particular character and build from there. It's always like, what's the world, and then sort of build that sort of cast that lives within that world.
It almost sounds like kind of earlier to what you're saying is kind of the power of collaborating with the others on the team, right? You can start building this stuff out and they'll say, hey, we need this or you need this. And it's almost like when you start big picture, the little details will start to fill themselves in based on feedback, based on what other people are thinking as well.
Yeah, and now we're in year two of built designing new characters. They're way more interesting than the original characters. Just because you have that time. You have you have that time to sort of really know what that world is, the style, certain shapes, colors, and stuff like that. And now it's all sort of like fluid and coming together, right? So.
If you, well, let's come back to this. Jason, why was it so important for you to create your own IP? Why was that a must do?
I mean, that's an interesting question. When we were first raising money for this, that was one of the questions that I got a lot, was like, well, why don't you just grab some other IP and then create a game? The problem is that then you first of all, you don't have control over much, right? Typically the person who owns the IP is going to have the ultimate control. What characters can you use? Which ones can't you use? To our point, we're storytellers, right? And so in the end, if I don't own the IP, I can't tell the story, right? Somebody else owns the story and controls that. And we just Vince and I, like, doing Peanuts and doing other, Horton Hears a Who and these other things, you realize that, like, you don't have the freedom to do what you want to do. And so for us, it was like, listen, I've got two of the best artists, period, in anything, in gaming, in film, and anywhere. If they can't create their own IP, then maybe I should go do something else. Like, we knew from the get go, it was like, we have to do our own thing. And plus, it's like, what fun is it? I mean, I shouldn't say it, but what fun is it doing somebody else's IP? Like, let's do our own. Let's create something that we can be proud of, that we can put our name on, say created by. This is who we created this. And then also from a business standpoint, when things hit and things land, you're in a much better position financially to leverage the game through other media outlets. And then ultimately, if you ever want to sell the company or get acquired, um, owning the IP gives that, is much more valuable than just a game developer studio. If you're developing other people's IP, it can be, and again, nothing against it. I mean, obviously, people did Monopoly, people have done other things and have made billions of dollars. Um, but for us, for a startup, um, you know, I'd rather have spent the capital and the resources on my team to build original, and then that's what stands out, and that's what stands out, and it's harder. It's going to be harder because if you don't have a known IP, it's more difficult to market. But once people find it, I think then that's when the magic happens, right?
I love to hear that. On my desk here, I'm a big Peanuts fan. I got a whole bunch of Snoopy stuff here, and it's funny the way you're talking about this. I remember when the Peanuts movie came out. I remember there were people that were against it wanting to come out because they're saying it can't have that same heart that Charles Schultz had when he was creating the comic. But then the
I
movie,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was one of the artists who was against doing it, and then I remember the art director was like, the director was said, "That's why I need you on the team." because you're so against it. Pretty
And it
funny.
did such a great job of keeping the heart that was there. It was such a well done movie. It was just like I was excited to watch it with my kids or without my kids at that point. Like you did it justice, and I think that's one of the things about having an IP that you're following, for better or for worse. It gives you
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
standards that they want you to stay in between. You can't take a chance and go crazy, right? But you're going to be particularly safe unless you really screw up, which a lot of games have screwed up licenses before.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I we could do a whole podcast just on that movie.
yeah,
And because by the way, like people don't realize, like Vince will tell you, Snoopy and Charlie Brown, what they look like changed like s- dozens and dozens of times throughout the comic strip.
yeah,
And so they had these guys put together this grid of like Charlie Brown, like it would be every part of Charlie Brown's face from like 1948 through
yeah.
like
I'm still,
19 through
I'm still
2010. Like,
traumatized by it though.
yeah, and then like how do you when Snoopy, what was it, Snoopy, right? So Snoopy, when he turns, his nose stays right the center, right? So his face moves, but his nose doesn't move. So how do you animate that? Like in 2D, it's fine because you see the shots, he never moves his face. But if you're doing 3D, he's got to move. So they had to create this sliding nose
Yeah,
that like
it
it
was
was wild, man. It was
the
crazy.
animation team like just changed the game on how to animate something like that. You know.
I, you're right. We can probably do a whole podcast because this is just getting me
Oh,
excited hearing this stuff. Like I want to
it
picture
was
now that all the Charlie
Yeah.
Browns kind of over the years, just kind of.
And
Um,
even like Charles Schultz's like line weight, like we had to decide, does the model go outside the lines, inside the lines? So do we split the difference? Like everything, because our characters don't have line. So.
all right, this is
and
hard, but let's
and
stay
as a
on track.
business guy, when we did Peanuts, I thought I was excited because I was like, "Oh, this is going to be so inexpensive. All the characters are already designed. It'll be." And everybody's like, "We'll do a 2D, 3D mix. It'll be quick and simple." It was like one of the most expensive movies we ever did.
You nailed it, though. Way to go. Um, so back to gaming, right? When the
Mhm.
two of you sit down in a couple of years from now, or maybe not even a couple of years from now, say, "Hey, what are we going to do for our second game?" Uh, Are you going to do anything different in the planning stages than what you did this first time? Were there any learnings that you took from this experience that you'll do different next time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're not, yeah, a ton of things that I would do differently. I mean, I know for us, I think we want to, I think the point of these game studios is to build more ambitious games. So, doing an open world game would be fantastic. And I know Vince has got a number of ideas and a number of artists that he would like to work with that we could build those games. But I think the biggest thing for me would be more in the planning stages, understand better market better market analysis, and meaning like look at what's in the market, who are you competing against, where were the games 5 years ago, where are they now, where have they gone, and then you need to come up with 4 or 5 really true differentiators, like where are you going to invest time, energy, resources to give players something that they don't already have. And it can't just be some gimmick of like, oh, we're going to add this little thing or that little thing. those things are important, and you should have dozens of those, but really have like two or three tentpole found bedrock foundations where you're saying, okay, this is what these type of games need. Whether it's more of X, more of Y, or we're gonna make it more casual. And this is, but whatever you try to work, make sure that you map those out early on and not wait to the like we waited till we put the game out there and then realized we needed to do more differentiation and we needed to do other things to really separate the game and get us out there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
And we talked about that earlier, right? We talked about in our pre-calls kind of when is too soon to launch, right? We see everyone going into alphas and betas, right? And it's just like, all right, well, are we ready to see it where in its current stage, right? And I'm sure if I had to take a guess, and I don't know, Vince, you might be a little more wary of launching sooner, maybe because it's the art and the story and kind of the stuff you're designing, but maybe the same thing you want to be seen so you can get that feedback.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
I mean, mobile games overall is still a very young industry. I mean, maybe it's 15 years old, right? At the most. And I think that when we started, there was a mindset that like, yeah, put the game out there, players will be accepting of the fact that it's not fully done and you can build it up over time. And I think that model used to be more acceptable, but there's so much money involved in mobile gaming now. I mean, it's over 100 billion. You've got these massive companies, you've got all these different things, massive teams, massive budgets. So I think the mindset of like putting a game out there before it's like 98% done is very, very risky. But obviously different companies have to get stuff out there. And also if you're depending on where you are, what genre you're in. But that's the thing where I think I saw an interview with the former CEO of Zynga, and he made the point of like you need to stop with the MVPs. Like, how if you want to have a closed beta test with your MVP just to get that's great. Do something with 1,000 players, open it up for 4 weeks, get feedback, close it, and then move on. But launching a game early, it's very risky because now you've got to split your team between live ops and development, right? So the game's not fully developed, but you have to support your players, or they'll leave soon. So now you split the team in half as opposed to all being focused in on development. So if you're all focused on development, you can move twice as fast. But as soon as you open up that game, it's split. Everybody's priorities are split, and it becomes. And also you have to add cost, right? You've got to add marketing. You've got to add player support. You've got to add all this other stuff that comes with it, so your costs go up quickly. And so I would say personally, do closed betas, closed alphas, whatever you closed MVPs, whatever you want to call them, just to keep confirming that you're on the right track. But then try to take the game as far as possible versus what else is in the market, and then before you go to release it. That's my opinion.
Vince, same feelings?
Yeah, for me, it's I always struggle, right? Because as an artist, you always want to do, all the work to perfection. But what I sort of learned was, you just have to let stuff go. You just have to make a decision. You just have to, you know, let your baby out there and let him, hurt himself, and you patch him up. So that's something I've come to learn, that yeah, you can't be too sensitive when it comes to the art process of releasing a game.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
because at the same time, it's not perfect. Yeah,
right.
and it could be so much better, but at the same time, like, you know I feel like people need to see it. People need to experience it.
Perfect is the enemy of good, right? So
Yeah.
if you keep waiting for perfection, you're never going to hit it, right? So
Yeah.
again, it's just trying to determine how do I know it's right. I'm having that argument with a studio right now. It's just like you need to pick up milestone, and at that milestone, you just gotta you do it, but you gotta decide on what that milestone is. Like even talk to the other people there. Like all of you agree on a milestone because you can't just keep it hiding forever. At some point,
Yeah,
let it rip.
yeah,
Yeah, we used to say I can't afford perfect. I can't I just can't afford everything to be. And by the way, not only that, but not everything can be at that same level. Some things you've just got to say like this has got to be at a B level or a C level. Like, it's just because it's not the most important thing that we're doing. So let's just get that done and ship it and make choices, right? Focus in on what is most important to Vince or most important to the game designer and focus in on those things or whatever it might be. And some things you just have to let it go. It's just they're not going to be not going to you're not going to win an award for that. Just let it go. It's okay.
So we're coming up to time here, right? And there's a few more things I want to hit on. But with season two now launching as of today, right? Are there
Mhm.
things that you've changed that you're excited for players to see, or are there things now that are on the roadmap that you're excited to be working on now that you kind of got something out there?
Yeah, I mean, we launched PvP a month ago, and the response so far has been actually really, really good. And we're really, really excited. I mean, player sessions doubled. And we're seeing a lot of response. So we're working on for season two, another number of other features, battle pass, loot boxes is another thing on our roadmap. And so we're getting a lot of the features in. We want to be more, for people on this podcast who don't know, because we haven't really talked about it, is that our game, Era, uh, offers players the opportunity to win the coins behind me uh, in the game. So you play leaderboards, you play in these events, finish on top of the leaderboard, and we send this around the world, these coins around the world to your house free of charge, and you collect them. And the response so far has been incredible. So we're going to be rolling out new coins as well for PvP. We're going to be rolling out more team coins, more special coins for our avid players. Like when once the battle pass rolls out, you'll be able to collect a coin with that. So a lot of really, really cool features. And because one of the things that we've learned is that our players love collecting these coins. And we've done the analysis on it. We've looked at eBay. Our coins go for an average of over $100 a coin. So the collectability is high, but we're also seeing not a lot of sales, which means that our players are winning them and they're holding on to them. And the best part is we're seeing players win these who spend money in the game, and we see players win these who are not spending money, who are just grinding and playing the game a lot. So it's a really cool thing to see that, because that was one of the things you talk about swinging for the fences. We had no idea if anybody would even care one bit about these coins. And Vince laughs, but
it's true.
like when we released the game in October and we did our first tournament, we were just like, okay, all right. So the first good sign was that I think 90 players won, and 89 out of the 90 redeemed the reward. So like, okay, players want to win the reward. They like to, and it's been that way. It's been like 98, 99% redemption. So players get in and they within 10 days in the US, 3 weeks internationally, the coins at your house. And then, like I said, and then they're trading on eBay, they're trading in our Discord. People are doing 3 4 way trades. And so we want to keep elevating the game so that the player experience keeps getting better and better and better. And then we also want to keep tapping into that collector mindset, because I think as people come into this game and as they collect these coins, they want to build their collections. We're also going to be launching a registry in the next couple months where players will be able to take their coins and have their own accounts, and then see what other, and we're going to give rewards for people who have collections, and the best collections or the best sets of these type of coins or those type of coins. And so it just adds, and then that information will go back into the game, which will be great, because then you'll see, okay, who are the biggest collectors? Who are the best? What guys, when I'm battling PvP, am I battling against a guy who's got a great set of coins and a great collector? And those type of things, just bragging rights and peacocking and just a lot of the fun social pieces of the game.
That's awesome. I have a question about the coins, but before we do that, is Vince with season 2 here? Any updates you're excited for players to check out?
Yeah, I mean, we started. I'm I'm a big sort of like blind box sort of toy collector. So anything with loot boxes and stuff like that, I'm always like, let's roll it. So that's something I'm pretty excited about.
All right. So the coins, that's such a unique differentiator and something I think is really awesome, right? I think there's a huge community out there of collectors that will find an engaging game and being able to get a coin from is something amazing. You've partnered with the Mint, which is awesome because they're producing these. How did that idea come about, and how does it actually happen? Like who calls the Mint up and figures this out?
So, so the original idea, if you believe it or not, going back to the earlier story, when we first met in, um, when we first met in New York, and Vince probably could tell the story of how he first met Mark, but basically, the one of our founders, Mark Salzberg, was also the founder of this company, Certified Collectibles Group, and they're one of the biggest graders of collectibles in the world. So, comic books, baseball cards, Pokemon cards, coins, stamps, money, all that stuff. And so he had this idea that we would first his first question to Vince, which I always find hilarious, was do people are there coins or collecting coins in video games? And Vince was like, yeah, pretty much
Every
every
single
video game. Every
yeah.
game has them.
every
But then
game
his
every game
idea
has a
was
treasure box. Every game has since Mario. So
right. And so his idea was, what if we rewarded players with ancient coins? And I was like, "Oh, that's yeah, like we actually just did last month, we did a promo where we gave away Byzantine coins that were like 1,300 years old, 1,400 years old, to our tournament winners, in addition to our character coins. But so we just said to him one simple question. Well, like, how many of these coins do you have? And he's like, "Oh, I could get like 10,000." And we were like, yeah, we that then what do we do after those 3 months? Like, then what? Like, what do we 10,000, we might have 1,000,000 users in our game eventually. Can't just get like I can't so that's when we moved away from that. And then we partnered with we partnered with the US Mint. To be clear, like the US Mint produced a coin that we had early access to. Our character coins are produced by a different mint um, that we use. But we're exploring using other mints too, and eventually having a coin that's denominated, so it's actually like a real coin as opposed to what we're doing, which is more just what they call a metal. But yeah, it's. But Mark went to the U.S. Mint and said, "Hey, listen, you want to reach a new demographic? Here's an idea." And I thought when we first met with the US Mint, I thought, wow, this is going to take like 2, 3 years. It's the government. And so we met and we walked away. And I want to say like a month later, they were like, all right, you guys want to do something in the fall? And I was like, what? I'm like, 'cause the game wasn't even going to be ready for when they were ready. But we again moved everything up. We made some changes, and then we were able to do the deal. And so we just actually right now we just did our second Royal Mint promo, or sorry, U.S. Mint promo, um, with a unique with a first time silver eagle with a flying eagle privy mark on it, and the response was incredible. I mean, we sold out in I think in less than 2 days. We sold all our coins, and so it's been really good. Again, collectors love to collect, and it's been really cool. Do you mind if I show some of our coins?
Please, by all means. We could also kind of, if it doesn't come out clear, we could just put pictures of them if you want to send them in afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we have so this is our team coin. And this is the one that players can get as an early bundle when you first come in the game. This is one of the only coins that we actually sell in the game. The rest you have to win. So we basically run four, like I'm giving you the promo. We run 4 week tournaments, and we do 1 week tournament, 1 week tournament, and then a 2 week tournament. And we run each time we run a character. So this is Scoria. And so this is the gold version of it. So this is for our top players in the game. And then we'll have a silver version and a color version. I think it's color. And so you can see here, this would be the color version. And we'll, right now we're giving out in each tournament cycle, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coins, and that will scale as the players scale. As we get more players in the game, we want to get as many coins in as many hands as possible. And like I said, the crazy part is really organic. Nothing to do with us. People are trading these for over $100 on eBay, and these gold have gone for a lot more. And so, because these are one of fives, so we only give out a few of these every tournament. That's it. The colors are more have more are like one of 350, one of 450, and then the silvers are one of 50s. So we want to keep that demand high for our best players to really offer them something unique and rare. And then, like I said, with every 4 weeks, it's a new boss that you're competing for, and these coins. The cool part is once this tournament's over, this is it. This coin will never be minted again. You'll never see this one again. The only place you'll be able to get it is on the secondary market. So we want players to know that when you win something, you've won something, and you're not gonna nobody else is gonna be able to get it except you.
I think that's such a great differentiator, especially in a market full of just clones of one another, right? The ability to actually win a physical prize, right, is something that people don't see anymore. They get in-game purchases instead, right? And I think being able to actually have something is just such a cool thing to do.
And that's the thing too. That's the part that kind of, again, one of the things when we started this that bugged me was, a lot of these games they make people pay a lot of money and they just get these digital rewards, and it's like you should be able to figure out a way to get them something more, to make that connection between the physical and the digital. And so that they're putting in their time and their commitment and their money as well, that they have a chance to win something and be rewarded with something. And like I said, once Battle Pass is up, we'll have coins tied to Battle Pass. So even if like if you buy Battle Pass, you'll be able to get a coin with that as well. So it's always like a great value proposition for the player.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all I have for you guys today. This is a super cool episode. We got to hear about kind of your beginnings at Blue Sky, about animation and creativity and business side of it, how it all comes together. And I think you're doing such a cool thing at Nice Gang with Eighth Era. Before we do go today, is there anything each of you want to say? Vince, I'll let you start.
No, I just want to say thank you. It's like you know, I originally got offered my first couple of jobs through video games, but it never weirdly panned out. So um so I went into movies, but now I'm back in games. I always felt like it was supposed to be.
Yeah, the two skill sets are all converging here, right? And you're luckily you know one of them, right? So you'll know both of them, and I think it's a good time to be there. Jason.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that and say thank you for having us on. It's we're, like Vince and we're very proud of the game that we have so far, and we're incredibly excited about the future. But I would say overall, like I know the video game industry is a tough business, and I know that there's a lot of ups and downs in the business. But I'll tell you what, I think the games are going to get more and more exciting, more and more beautiful, and I think that the passion, one of the things that I loved about making the transition from animation to gaming is the people that are in this space are just as passionate as animators and artists were making movies. Like we used to go to this conference called SIGGRAPH, and it was sort of the animation visual effects conference, the way GDC is to gaming. And I'm telling you, you could literally swap out the people there. One, right, Vince? Like one for one,
One
you
for
could swap out. And I stick out like a sore thumb in both places. But
one.
but I will tell you this, like you know, I love being around those people because they have just such a passion for what they do. Um, you know, gamers, when they're done working, after working 50-hour weeks, what do? They
We
go home
game.
and they game, right? Animators did the same thing. Like when they were done working long hours, they'd either go home and practice their animation to get better, or draw as Vince and his team would do. They'd go do, I mean, at lunch, they would go paint and they would keep working on their craft. Or they go home and watch movies and watch what other people are doing and get inspired. So it's just I'm just very lucky to have, been a part of all that as not as a non-artist. It's been great.
That's awesome to hear, and I love that sentiment of just continuing to learn afterwards because we love what we do. Before we do finalize for today, let us know, either one of you, where we can find Eighth Era in Nice Gang.
Yeah, sure. So you can find Eighth Era on the app stores, iOS and Android. So 4.8 stars on the App Store. So people are loving the game. Please get going. Within a day, you'll be thrust into your first tournament and have an opportunity to compete for a physical reward. And then also check us out at nicegang.com. We're always going to be adding content, expanding the lore. You can see what coins have already been put out there, what the next ones coming down the pipe are, and a little bit and a lot about Eighth Era and the game itself. So go check it out.
Awesome. Thanks again to Jason and Vincent. A huge congrats on season 2 of Eighth Era. That's awesome that you've made it to season 2. I'm excited to see what you continue to build out. If you're not following them along yet, we'll have links to their Play Store and iOS store so they can download the game, check it out. It's still early, so get on early and enjoy it. And again, guys, thank you so much for sharing your story today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate having us on.